So, welcome everyone to this recording of in it for our FEM group. I am joined today by Carly Dunningham, and she and I are going to talk today about managing grief and work. So, Carly, thank you so much for joining me to talk about what is, for all of us, a really sensitive topic and something that I know that you and I have, briefly touched on. That it is going to be quite difficult and quite emotional. But thank you for agreeing to share with us. I think it's really important. And do you just want to sort of introduce yourself to the group and to the session, and tell us a little bit about what what you're doing at Pavis and your job?
Sure. My name is Carly Dunningham. I'm a financial planner and director at Verso Wealth Management. We were previously called Pavis. We renamed a couple of years ago. Um, been there for a long time. I kind of help manage the Liverpool office as well as being in a client-facing financial planning role. And I'm also just recently taken on the role of chair of the Financial Planning Forum at the CISI.
Excellent. And apologies for saying Pavis. That's because I've known the firm name for so long like that. So, so sorry about that, everyone.
I
Um,
really find it hard. It feels strange still.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, listen, Carly, we've agreed some questions, and we'll just kind of start off with those. But obviously, we may find that we talk about other things. But can you share, your story that's really got you, I guess, why you wanted to share that today? And when I sent around the list of things I needed people to volunteer to talk about, you said that this one kind of stood out. So do you want to just share a little bit with us why that is and what's happened?
Sure. Yeah. As soon as I saw that on the list, I thought that has to be me to speak about this. Just with it being so recent. So earlier this year, mid-May this year, my mum got really ill out of the blue. So and it came as such a shock because she was 78. But she lived such a healthy lifestyle for that age. She had no long-term medical conditions. She was on no medication. She was still working 2 days a week to keep her brain ticking over. She did all sorts of exercise classes, hardly drank, never smoked, kind of did all the right things. And then so when she started to feel really tired and she was getting stomach ache and was a little bit off of food. I'd been with her at the weekend. And so she kept saying, I'm going to go to the doctors. And all of us were hounding, saying, you really need to go and get bloods taken. I just thought she might have a virus or something. So she went along. She woke up one morning and she'd gone jaundiced. So I think that gave her the fright of her life. She saw herself in the mirror, so she got herself straight to the doctors that day. Um, she had blood tests, and the doctors told her that she needed to go to A&E that day, that her liver function was kind of way off the scale from where it should be, and there was a chance it might be cancer. So our world was just kind of thrown completely upside down from that moment. We then had weeks and weeks of hospital stays, and different investigations, scans. Um, it was horrific, to be honest. So we had this period of all these investigations and hospital appointments. It was about 6 weeks in that we finally got the firm diagnosis. By this point, I had spoken to various consultants on the phone. I was badgering them at the hospital she was in, and I kind of knew what we were. When the point we got the diagnosis, I kind of worked it all out. We weren't completely surprised because we already knew what was kind of coming. But the diagnosis was stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the prognosis at that point was, we could only have a few months. I think that the first prognosis was kind of 4 to 6 months. So going from mum being fine, actually, the week after mum became ill, we were supposed to be going to Disneyland Paris. She was coming with us, so that was how well she was at the time. So going from that and kind of 6 weeks later getting the diagnosis, and actually in the end she only lived another month after that diagnosis. So mum died on the 1st of August. So it had been kind of 10 weeks from the point of her first feeling ill and going to the doctors to the day that she was gone. So it was just a whirlwind. Um, Felt surreal at times, kind of, from my experience, kind of going through that, you just feels like it's not really you. Almost felt like I was in some sort of, I was watching something play out before
Yeah.
me. It's really bizarre. So it's been, yeah, the most difficult thing I've had to go through so far in my life. I was really close to my mum, like she was my best friend. So yeah, it's been tough. I'm trying to keep my emotions
Yeah, of course.
under
I mean, they're
control.
just such like, yeah, we're talking about grief, but a lot of that is that there's shock and trauma and all sorts of things in that as well, isn't there? Your body and we're not good with change naturally. Everything's just for everything to all happen at once is just, really, really difficult. So how did you sort of manage that, I guess, with, what conversations then came up at work and, I mean, it feels like it happened so quick though. It's just like you had to probably just go with your gut a little bit as well.
It was definitely going with my guts. So initially, when we were first kind of having all the hospital in the early stages of it, um, I just kind of I told work straight away, and they've been amazing, really. They've been so supportive, and I sat down with Quentin, and I sat down with my line manager and the kind of senior people at work, and just said, if this is happening. I need to be there. I need to be at the hospital appointments with her. And I don't know what's going to pan out, but I just need to be there. So I'm not going to be able to do my full hours. So that's how I went with to start with. I just knew I needed to be there as much as I could possibly be. So initially, I was just kind of doing a few hours of work a day as I could fit it in. So I was quite often staying at my mum and dad's house because they're about an hour and a half drive from where I live. And then the hospital that mum was in eventually was even further. So I was having to I was living out of a suitcase for a good 6 weeks or so or longer, where I was just coming backwards and forwards. I'd spend a few nights at their house, do whatever was needed there, supporting them, come home for a few nights and then go back again. So trying to fit work into that was difficult. So I just did a few hours kind of first thing in the morning or where I could fit them in. And work just kind of said, make sure, I think the exact words, but make sure you're not going to drop any balls, make sure there's nothing that's you're going to completely miss. So I made sure that any big projects or big client cases I was dealing with, I had people supporting and delegating bits out on that. And then I was literally just servicing my emails every day, answering any phone calls that I needed to, just to keep on top of things. I cancelled all my client meetings that I had scheduled, and everyone was really understanding. Um, but then I suppose as things progressed, some of my close friends and family kept questioning whether I should just be off work completely and not even be trying to do a few hours work. And initially I kept saying, no, I need to do this. It's keeping me, it's like a little bit of a distraction. I can compartmentalize for a bit and absorb into work for a few hours. But then it reached a point when we got the diagnosis and I knew that we didn't have long left. There were a few things really then going around in my head. I thought, one, I don't want to look back and regret anything. I don't want to feel that I didn't spend enough time. And that time was both kind of being an emotional support for mum and dad, the caring support that she needed. But also I wanted to make the most of the time. So we had days out. She just wanted to go to her favourite places. We had a wheelchair, so she was too weak by that point to really have big trips out. So we'd just get to the places she wanted to go to. And I didn't want to miss all of that. But also my head just couldn't have been in work. For me, I think there was no really real choice. I had to be off work. I couldn't have concentrated on anything at that point, and I think everything else just kind of faded into insignificance compared to what was going on with mum and with the family. So it was quite an easy decision for me to just
Yeah,
say, I'm out of work now.
because I was going to say, like, how was it like coming to that? Because I think, so many people listening will resonate with the fact that language we use so often in society is the, well, work will be a good distraction. I'll keep myself busy. I don't, hopefully work can keep, or life continues and we've got to get on with it. And words like that, so it does feel quite, especially, I mean, I don't know whether it happens in other, probably does in other professions too, but I think there is a lot of language around that. Um, so then it must have felt very strange to go, no, I've got to give in to this. Like, almost this is what it is. Like, this is the only thing I need to do.
Yeah, yeah. It's strange thinking about it. Now, at the time, it felt like an easy decision. I just knew that that's what I needed to do. We've got a good team. I knew that I just needed to take myself out of it, and for once, work was going to come last. Um, when I think about it now that I'm back and I'm fully engrossed in everything in the business again, I can't imagine how I did it. But yeah, it wasn't a difficult decision. I just knew that that's what I needed to do. Um, and again, I had conversations and everyone was really understanding. So I got signed off. I spoke to the doctor, kind of, like I had to accept I'm dealing with a very high stress situation and I'm not able to work. So I got signed off, and just, yeah, delegated. I did touch in and out of things. I did odd call with people at work just to see how things were going and checked on my emails every now and again because it's difficult to completely, but there was nothing. It was good to know that nobody was relying on me for anything. They knew that I wasn't there and I delegated everything that I knew needed to be dealt with while I wasn't around. But I think people deal with it differently. That was the way I had to do it. And I'm glad I did it that way. But I know other people, like my brother wasn't able to take his time off work. He took a really short break of compassionate leave. And I couldn't understand how he was doing it. I still don't know how he was going into work. And I think he needed it. He was going into
Yeah.
work, putting it all to the back of his mind and getting on with his job.
And everyone's different. Like,
We're
that's
all
the story
different.
that we've got to kind of probably will flow through all of this is everyone handle all of these things differently. And also, what was coming to me while you were talking then was that it probably also depends where you work. um, and almost the support group that you've got, the people that you could rely on to do those things. And I mean, it certainly would be a big challenge if you didn't have, other people who were going to sort of step in and do some of that. And even if your clients would be, let's think about someone who might be like a sole trader and self-employed on their own, even if their clients would be completely understandable to you taking that step back, there would be stuff that just needed doing, right?
Yeah,
Even if you're not doing the client meetings, we both know there are other things in the business that have to be done. So I imagine it does probably depend where you work as well. And sounds like you had a really great team to support you.
yeah, yeah. And I've thought about that a lot actually recently, how I suppose quite lucky and privileged I feel that I was able to do that and have the team. And that as run while we were preparing for today, I was thinking of what would you do if you're a sole practitioner? How would I have handled that if I was just running my own business and didn't have that team? And I think having been through it now, I'd, encourage people to have some sort of backup plan, that there is someone, you can hand things over to and
Yeah,
fill
it's
in
weird because
somehow.
we always talk about like, you're not allowed to be a sole trader and not have a locum. But is this when you'd get your locum to step in? Like, the reality is, I don't know. Like, I don't, because
No.
the FCA would want to know that your locum was stepping in. So there's huge amounts of complications if you don't have another qualified person or you don't have, for a prolonged period of time.
Mm,
It does, like, it's made me think about it as well.
mm.
Yeah. But so talk to me a little bit about returning to work then, because I know that in your notes that you wrote, we talked a little bit about you were just going to come back, and then someone said maybe you need to phase this. So talk to me a little bit about what happened there.
Yeah, so I decided I planned my return date, and it was just over 3 weeks after Mum had died. Um, So I felt like we'd done the the memorial. Mum didn't have a funeral. She wanted a memorial celebration of her life. So we'd had that. I thought, go back to work once all of that is done. And I hadn't really thought about how I was returning back to work. I was just thinking that I'd be ready for it and I wanted to throw myself back into it. And then it was my colleague Julie, she was um amazingly, she checked all my emails while I was away, while I was off. So had noticed when I was checking on me, she'd replied to a few client emails to say, oh, Carly's back on this date. She's having a phased return to work. So I was like, well, I haven't said that. I just said I'm coming back. I didn't know anything about a phased return. So it was accidental, really. It wasn't intentional for me to be phased, but it actually worked out. It was just what I needed because I hadn't anticipated how exhausted I would feel when I first came back. So actually, the first couple of weeks, a few hours a day was enough. Um, I think the physical impact on your body of what I'd just been through, I wasn't anticipating in any way. Um, I think, as you said before, I think earlier on, Gretchen, this the trauma of what you're going through, and then the grief, and the two separate things that you're dealing with at the same time. So I think through the whole process of mum being ill, I was probably in some sort of fight or flight kind of stress levels high that whole time.
Yeah, well,
And
your
then
adrenaline's
that,
probably keeping
yeah,
you going, isn't it? And
yeah,
you're having to double down on everything that you're doing. Yeah.
yeah. So when you stop, my body just kind of went, oh, I can rest now. And then I'm trying to get back into work again. So yeah, those first few weeks, I just didn't really do much more than a few hours a day. I didn't start seeing clients for those first 2 weeks. It was just gradually getting caught up on things, catching up with all the team on any projects that I'd handed over, and um, contacting back with any of my clients that had that queries ongoing while I was off. So yeah, the phased really did work. I don't think I could have done. I'd have just been too exhausted. It would have broken me before I'd even got back into things properly.
Yeah. And what about returning to, like you said, to start off with, you didn't do client facing stuff. And what about returning to that? Because I imagine that prompted, or and still does, you're navigating quite a lot of emotional stuff because people know and people want to check you're okay. And you'll have some days where you feel really strong and maybe others where it's not so good. So how are you navigating that, or how are you feeling about that now?
Okay with that now. I think that I remember the first client meeting I had when I came back. I just suddenly realized partway through the meeting, I thought, I'm not fully present here like I would have been before. I wasn't giving the same quality listening that I normally would. And it just suddenly, I thought, I'm not giving 100%, but then I probably wasn't capable of doing it at that time. Um, and I think a few times in client meetings recently, I've thought about the fact that I've still got a lot going on and still not 100%. So it is part of it for me is just thinking is kind of managing your own emotions and well-being state and checking in with myself regularly. So I'm able to give a bit more of my normal self to the clients because the rest of the time I'm trying to do all the things that I do to make myself feel better. So I'm making sure I've got back into like my exercise and my meditation. I've not been doing, I say that I haven't actually been doing it as much as I want to. Yoga, all the things that I do to help me feel better and 100% to give to my job and my clients. I've had to get back to doing those things because those things just went out the window for a while. And I think that impacts then on if I'm not doing those things and looking after myself. I think in the sort of job that we do, because you do need to connect with people on a deep level, you need to have all of those things in place. So it has been hard. Some clients don't even know what I went through, and I haven't just got to a point now where I'm like, if they don't know, I'm just going into the meeting and not mention it. But quite a chunk of them did because they might have tried to get in touch when I wasn't there. So we do have the initial at the start of the meeting where they check in and ask how I'm doing. So I have been a little bit teary at times, especially with the clients that I know really well. Um, but I've just thought that's fine because I'm human, and if they're going to ask me how I'm doing, then yeah. there is
And I
an
think
emotion
I
there.
think it's relevant. Like, listen, we're all gonna, everyone listening, we know that we're gonna, if we haven't been through it, we're gonna go through it. Um, and as especially, the audience that we're primarily driving this to is women in financial services. We're all juggling an awful lot, and the female um, part of the family tend to get a lot more of those kind of responsibilities, or at least we naturally just take on more of that responsibility, where we're caring for people who are sick, or we're then supporting the people who are left behind, because
Yeah,
you're also still supporting your dad, right? So
yeah, yeah,
there's
complete.
multiple layers there,
Yeah,
which impact, even though you're back to work, you're still, you're grieving, you're looking after yourself, but you've also got layers of other people that you're trying to look after.
yeah, that's very true. And Dad, bless him, he's doing really well. He's got Parkinson's and he's partially sighted. So initially I was just like, how is he going to cope on his own? He's doing
Mm,
well. He's doing. He doesn't think he is, but I think he is
yeah.
looking after himself well. But there is that. There is. In fact, I had him on the phone this morning just before this, asking me for help with something. I did the probate and I need to put power of attorney in place for Dad, and yeah, there is still a lot of that, and that will continue. And I think you're right; it can quite often be the females in the family that pick up just naturally
Yeah.
those caring roles. Um,
And it's an added responsibility now on you with your work, and looking after yourself and looking after clients and all of that. You've got that added thing that it's not that you don't want those things, it's just that it is an added thing that you've got to kind of get your head round and think about and take the phone call and all of that kind of thing.
yeah, it is, and I think yeah, and that's where it becomes all the more important to check in with yourself regularly and still make sure you keep a priority there for the things that help you get through and feel better and for your own well-being.
Mm.
Um, because it's easy not to and forget about yourself.
And is that kind of concept, I guess, we probably call it being kind to yourself, isn't it? And thinking about that. But has that evolved in the last couple of months for you? Because it's still really short time frame as well. But like, are you finding certain things that you've talked about yoga, but are those other things that you've kind of adopted now as a kind of, way of coping with this?
I think all of those things, I've just fallen back on all the things that I've always done that help me. Um, and but the being kind to yourself, a few people had said that to me when Mum passed away, and I was like, what does that even mean? I've never really fully understood what that means.
Yeah.
Um, but what I've realized over these last few months is it's that checking in and just thinking, am I doing too much? Am I still looking after myself? And not giving yourself a hard time over things. There've been things, I made a couple of mistakes since I came back. There was one time just a few weeks ago where I'd made a client appointment and um, I had it in my diary and I'm sitting there doing the prep the day before and I get a phone call from the client saying, where are you? You normally, you're never late. And I put it in my diary for the wrong day. And I went back over our WhatsApp messages and he clearly said the Wednesday and I put it in for the Tuesday. So they're sitting there waiting for me. And initially, I mean, they were absolutely fine and they knew what I'd been through, so they were understanding. And the next day was fine for them, so I still went out to see them when it was in my diary. Um, and I gave myself a hard time about that initially. I was kind of feeling embarrassed and shame for having made such a stupid mistake, and I felt guilty that they were sitting there waiting for me. And then it's just kind of stepping back, thinking, hold on, there's a lot going on still. I'm trying to do everything again, and actually, we're only a couple of months on from losing mum, so mistakes like that are probably understandable, and just yeah, allow it, just being easy, going easy on yourself, and not giving yourself a hard time for things that don't quite go right. Um, I've recently taken on this chair role at the CISI as well, and that's come kind of not at the right time. It would have been better if it had been a little bit later on. Um, and I'm stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit with that. And initially with that, I'm thinking I'm not doing a good enough job of this yet because I haven't been able to fully embrace it like I would do under normal circumstances. Like right now, I'm glad I've got the opportunity and taking this role on, and it's 3 years, so I've got time to kind of settle
Yeah.
into it and make my mark. But as a starting point, I'm not throwing myself into it the way I would normally because I just haven't got the energy level and the headspace to do that. So again, I'm kind of communicating those needs, not just with work where I'm struggling, but with those, and you do lots of voluntary roles like me as well, with those
Yeah.
voluntary roles, just to say, explain to Chris and Sally what I was going through. And I nearly said no to it, but decided to take it on. They know what I've gone through. So I'm just kind of taking my time with lots of things. But it is easy still. You have to keep reminding yourself, I think, 'cause it's easy to give yourself a hard time and think that you've got to be perfect at everything all the
Yeah.
time.
And we do hold ourselves to very high standards.
Yeah.
And actually, it's okay sometimes if we're not hitting those really high standards. Like, just gotta, we are human. And yeah. So it sounds like from a work perspective, they've been, it's been a good experience for you and has been positive in the sense that they've made this, which is a very hard and horrible time, a lot easier. But
Yeah.
are there anything that, as a business, you're sitting on the board and you've experienced this that you think, do you know what, if this happened to someone else in our work, this wasn't ideal and we could improve it so that, if the people listening were thinking and we're running business and thinking, what will we do? Like, is there anything that could have gone better that you would have changed, you would change?
Yeah, I think the initial kind of encouraging me to do that they basically said do whatever you need to do when I needed to go off. And that was amazing and supportive. I think coming back, obviously I had that phased return which was prompted by Julie. I think the coming back could be improved in terms of having more acknowledgement that that person's going to struggle for a while and checking in with them regularly, um, and asking them what they need and just I suppose that awareness that you've gone through that difficult period, but it's also raw still, even a few months on, and you're still not going to be at full capacity for a while, up back to normal. So I suppose having that awareness of that and making sure that there's a person who's checking in with you regularly to see if there's any extra support you need and how you're doing. I
That's
think,
quite interesting because we do, I think most people would do like a return to work kind of, you have to do a return to work kind of check in and assessment. But I don't, yeah, how long that, is there more structure for a prolonged period of time that would be more suitable, maybe as the, and as you say that it is structured and it's everybody knows what that is and it's going to be followed. Yeah, that's really interesting.
so I think, yeah, even if it's not that structure, just having the person that's there that is just checking in with you emotionally and in a supportive way. um, and an awareness that you don't just come back to work and just get back to things as normal, that it's not quite normal still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about for you personally? Like, this is something that, well, I said that all of us at some point will go through, but it affects everyone so differently. And do you think that and it was so sudden, like as you said, from sort of start to finish, just like thinking she was really, really, really well and everything, and to then sort of only being 10 weeks. I mean, have your priorities as a person and what you want from life like shifted and is that when we're talking about work-life balance and we all work really hard and then we're trying to manage these personal things we want to do as well, like do you feel like you've had a shift yourself?
Funny one this. I was thinking about this question. Not hugely, to be honest. I think I've always really been mindful of work-life balance and prioritizing my family's important to me, always has been. So I've always tried to keep a really good balance and not get kind of let work completely control everything. Um, So I suppose that even more so now, I'm prioritizing time with family. It's made me realize you just don't know what's around the corner for anybody. So um, in terms of making plans with my family and things, your kind of bucket list things, just kind of it's making me more think of just getting on and doing things, enjoying experiences together because you don't know how many you've got left. Um, and I think just being a bit more compassionate with other people, and then the realization that you just don't know what someone else is going through. Um, So, I mean, I've always been a very smiley person. I'm type, but I regularly smile and say hello to strangers in the street and spot conversation with people I don't know. But I think that's even more so now because I just you just don't know what's going on in someone's life. So if you can spread a bit of joy when you feel like it and give a stranger a smile, that's even more on my radar than it has been before, and I'm feeling more connected to other people because of that.
Mm.
Um, and just having more understanding if someone seems like they're a bit grumpy or whatever, rather than just taking out they're a bit moody today. You don't know what's going on. Um, I remember at the conference when I saw you in October, I was exhausted when I came back from that because I spent the whole time people saying, "How are you?" I just had this smile plastered. I mean, I'm good, thank you, and I
Yeah.
just lied the whole time because that was quite soon after, really, in hindsight, and it was difficult. Just pretending that everything's okay because I thought I can't spend the whole conference saying, "Well, actually, no, everything's really
No.
crap." That's why.
I'm not very good at pretending everything's okay. I do it pretty well. And I think that you do, as you say, especially a conference, plaster it, put a smile on your face or whatever. But I think yeah, and you don't want to have to talk to you're meeting like 50 strangers at that place. You're not
Yeah.
going to want to tell them the whole story. So you do have to have an element of strength around just no, that's not what I'm gonna do.
Mm.
I think that then it sometimes gets a bit like you can get overwhelmed with that. Like
Yeah.
that almost like pretense of like everything's fine.
Not. Yeah.
I'm not really.
Yeah, and that was definitely the day after. I mean, it's partly because I'd probably drank too much and stayed up like too late as well. But I can remember feeling floored the next day, and it was just that, yeah, pretending.
Mm,
And sometimes you have to put that on, like so, you couldn't spend the whole time telling people that you're not right and
well, and
telling them.
when they ask you, they're not really asking you. That's the thing,
Yeah,
isn't it? They're not really asking you in that
they want the
environment.
honest answer.
They're not really wanting to know all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's still that kind of you do have to put um, a brave face is a very cliched word, but a phrase. But I think that's what you do have to do, really, to get
Yeah.
on with, to get through the day to day and
Yeah.
get through
Yeah.
things like that, through conferences, through, you know,
Or even just days of back to, if you've got lots of client meetings, just kind of putting it all
yeah,
away and just facing it. But I think it's then having the awareness that at some point you've got to face the feelings that you're suppressing, because I've realized that as well. Some days I'm really good at facing my emotion because I've always believed that you need to deal with emotions and not bottle them up. I think it can lead to lots of problems. Um, but I know now I can suppress things without realizing for a while, and then it just comes and it can just, I mean, the grief can just hit me like a sledgehammer. Sunday just gone. I think it's good. I've spent 5 days with Dad last week. I took him to Spain, and being with him every day, I'm just like smiley face for him.
yeah,
And then I came home, the next day. I woke up at the weekend on either Saturday or Sunday, and I just couldn't stop crying for the whole most of the day. I had to go back to bed because it just, and it's I think the enormity and the finality of it that you're not going to see that person again, that person who was like everything to you.
yeah,
Um, and it just whacks you and takes everything. And if you keep kind of putting the brave face on and plowing through, at some point you're going to have to deal with those emotions and
yeah.
some whether it comes out in anger or tears, and you just have to fake go through it.
Yeah, you have to feel it, and you just have to, yeah, get through it. You will get through it, but it doesn't mean that's going to be easy or nice. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I imagine that like going to Spain with your dad, you're creating something, you're wanting to do it together, but also you want her there, right? So that's quite emotional kind of afterwards of like we've been and we've got through it, but
Yeah.
yeah,
There's a person missing. Yeah, it is.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So like just to end, and thank you so much for sharing, because I think, it's something that everyone will be able to relate to, or know that they know someone who's suffering, or that they, how they can try and, support that person at work. But if you were going to give one piece of advice to someone who's, going through this, going through a death of a loved one, and balance, or trauma, or dealing with dealing with a loved one being sick, and their career, and their livelihood, when they've still got to make their money, and how they're trying to balance that out, what would that piece of advice be?
Really difficult to give one.
Okay, well, I'll give several.
I might give that one. I think, and it's a bit of a cliche, really, and what people kept saying to me is just being kind to yourself and thinking about what you need. Um, Not giving yourself a hard time if you're struggling, just really thinking about what you need each day. And as you said before, you don't know how you're going to feel from one day to the next, and just really taking your time with it. Um, and the other big one is communicating that to other people, the people close to you and the people at work. Tell people how you're doing and what you need. Because I think as humans, and maybe even more so as women, we're not very good at putting our own needs first. I think this is the time when you really need to, um, and make sure you keep doing that check-in with yourself on how you feel, um, what you need to do to make things a little bit easier for yourself. Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
couldn't agree more. I think also we have to just kind of go. Do you know what? I really respect, or the fact that you just got signed off. So I think a lot of people like that probably have never done that.
I'd never done it. I've hardly ever taken time off for anything while I've been working.
Yeah, kind of just
Um,
kind of, this stoic kind of like we will
yeah,
just get on with it.
yeah,
And I think, it just proves that how you said, like, at the time it didn't feel like a hard decision. You knew it was the right decision. And maybe that's the thing, at the time when it is the right decision, it will just happen because you'll need it to happen.
yeah,
And people can take that away, that, when I'll know when the time is needed, that I'll need to do that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah, being, I couldn't, yeah, be kind to yourself, and I like not judge yourself. I think that's quite, just,
Because
yeah,
I've been
really
doing that. I'm saying
important.
that, I'm still learning. I keep having to remind myself not to judge myself and give myself a hard time and beat myself up because this didn't go quite right. Um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a big one.
Well, listen, thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing. It was really, really good, and I'm wishing you like all the best, because there'll be, there's months of kind of navigating this to come still. So yeah, I hope that it does get, I hope it does get a little easier, and then you'll
Mm.
have lots of happy memories to think about.
Thank you, thank you. And hopefully, what we've talked about today will help someone out there that's listening, whether they're going through something similar now or in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Carly.
Thanks, Gretchen.